So, I just wanted to record this because I don't know, I guess whenever I don't get any sleep for whatever reason, I feel like recording a lot. Um so, maybe I should not sleep more often. And I don't know what it is, but right now it's Saturday when I'm recording this. And for some reason I can never sleep on Saturdays. At first I thought it was because my upstairs neighbor is really loud. Not really loud, she's not unreasonably loud, which is why I've never went upstairs and confronted her because she's just walking around her apartment. But it's just she walks she has her boyfriend over, and her and her boyfriend, they're always walking around late into the night, really early into the morning on Saturdays. So I go up to my grandfather's cabin that he has. It's only a few minute drive for me, and I just sleep there. And I've been doing that every day actually, just because it's nice up there, and I just don't have to worry about anything waking me up. But for some reason on Saturdays, I always wake up really early in the morning slash late at night, meaning 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and I'll go to bed at 2. And it's also weird though because I feel fine. If I get less than 6 hours of sleep on a weekday, I feel like shit. But I can get 3 hours of sleep on Saturday, and I'm not my brain isn't firing on all cylinders, but I feel fine just going throughout my day. But the main reason I wanted to record this though is just I don't know, it's just Saturday's over, and I hate that feeling because it's the weekend is effectively over, and it always feels like I never did enough. I never cherished it enough, and really, it's just that there's just not enough time. Um, it's such a miserable life working 40 hours a week. I think I work technically more because I work 8.5 hours a day, so that would be what, 2.5 hours more a week, so 42 and a half hours. And then the commute is a half an hour, so really it's 9.5 hours. Um, but yeah, it's just such a miserable experience, and I feel like a lot of people don't really feel that way. A lot of people are very content with it and don't seem to really care, and it's just not. It's just really not something I've ever been comfortable with at all. Um, I've heard comedians and artists and shit. They'll be like, "Oh, I could never work a regular job. I could never work 40 hours a week. I just couldn't handle it." I remember Joe Rogan saying that about getting into comedy. He was like, I got into comedy, or maybe it was Bill Burr, I don't know, but whoever it was, they were like, I got into comedy because I just could not work a regular job. I just hated it. And I relate to that. I've tried to avoid having a full time job for as long as I could. Um, and I've been tempted before to just get on disability, but I just don't want to get completely rug pulled by the government. I think that's a very short sighted thing to do, just getting on disability, because it just takes look at the government shutdown with SNAP and everything. It just takes one thing from the government, and then it's okay, you haven't worked in fucking 30 years, and now you're broke, and no one wants to hire you because you've you've allegedly been disabled for 30 years, and also you just, even if the disability wasn't a factor, you haven't worked for 30 years. So it's what are you going to do? And it's hard enough to get a job with a bachelor's degree. I'm still getting job rejections from places. I've been working at my current job for about 2 months now, and getting the actual getting to work after getting accepted from them took a month in itself because it was so bureaucratic, and I had a trillion forms that I had to fill out and things I had to send to them. So it's been 3 months since I applied to a lot of these jobs, and I'm still getting rejection notices. It's hard enough, and that's I got a bachelor's degree and I have a bunch of work experience. So it's hard enough if you had no experience for decades, and the only other experience you had was whatever entry level jobs you did before you got on disability, assuming you were young when you did, then you'd be absolutely screwed. So that's why I just never wanted to do that. But, I get why people do it. It's just so miserable working it's your whole life, and it's so depressing because this is the one time that you're going to have where you're going to be able to like you're going to be able to observe a universe that exists, like it's so rare that life exists in the universe that can experience and like understand, or I guess not understand, but like that can um that can observe the universe and think about it, and really not just like be reactionary and instinctual. um and this is like your only opportunity to do that unless there's an afterlife. But it's like, that's not like like the jury's still out on that, whether there's an afterlife or not. So as far as this is like your only shot to explore the universe and to think about things and to be you, to be your own personality, to be an individual, a conscious, sentient individual being. And you're spending all that time just typing away at a keyboard. It's fucking dismal, and most people don't even really notice it. People will be like, "Oh, like, thank God it's Friday, thank God it's Friday," in the work group chat, and I just think like it just sucks so much living for one day, because it really is just one day, even though you have Sunday off too. I mean, it's like Friday night is enjoyable, but even that, it's like I get home at 6, and then I'll go to bed at like, maybe 12 or 1. So it's like a few hours of enjoying myself, especially after I like make dinner and wind down and everything. And then you get Saturday, which is where you actually get to enjoy your day. And then Sunday, it's, running errands for me. And I think that's the same for a lot of people. Um, and it's just not enough time to yourself. I mean, that's why I'm doing all this stuff with college. That's why I want to be a therapist, because I want to only have to work like 3 days a week. That's the real goal. And with therapy, you can do that. And, I do think it'd be a really interesting job. Like, I don't have like any direct therapy experience, but like I've watched therapists work with like internships, and I've, at my job, there's like a therapy sort of adjacent element to it. So it is, like I think I have some sort of information of like how I would enjoy it, and I do think I'd like it a lot, doing therapy. And it's really the only thing I can think of I'd actually like doing as a job, because even my other interests, I mean, like physics, I like physics, but that would just you wouldn't be able to be like a fun experimental physicist, thinking about a bunch of different theories. You'd probably just be working under someone working on like one study every few years, punching away at numbers, um, or working at like some factory for people who don't even appreciate your expertise. They just want whatever predictions you can provide as a physicist. And then, I like history, but I had a history professor. I was talking to him, and I was telling him that I don't like working and I just want an easy go of it. And to just, I was like, ideally I'd just be able to like read whatever I want and not have to work. And he was like, "Oh, you should be a history professor then." Which is pretty funny, given that he was a history professor telling me this. And he's like, I just you come and you teach your class, and once you can teach your class the way you want to, as long as you follow like a kind of basic guideline, like a basic outline of certain things you have to touch on when you're teaching. And he's like, you can teach how you want to, and once you have your slides written, then they're just kind of written. You don't ever really need to add to them. And then you get summers off, and then you can just read whatever you want all summer. And teaching isn't too hard. And I mean, especially for him, because I mean, this fucking guy, he would just sit there with his Mountain Dew, and I liked him, but like, he was so lazy. He would just sit there and like lazily read off of the slides he wrote probably like 10 years ago. And all of his quizzes were online. And people in that class, it was insane. I mean, I went to a pretty ghetto college, and people in that class, they'd go to class, and they wouldn't even have the courtesy to stay around for the whole class. What they do is he would take attendance, and they would sign the sign-in sheet and then immediately leave. And I was like, that's such a fucking scummy move. Like, sure, I was sitting there like fucking daydreaming half the time, or like working on other schoolwork, unless he was talking about something I found interesting. But I don't know. It's like, you gotta at least, like, you don't want to be like overtly a fucking dickhead. You want to at least look like you're paying attention. And I mean, literally every single person in that class, I'd look around and there'd be like maybe one or two people paying attention. I'm not even kidding. Out of like a big lecture hall, everyone else was watching fucking movies on their laptop, or sleeping, or just on TikTok. Um, and I wouldn't want to work like that. I mean, that would be an option, but I don't want to be in academia and deal with all the politics. And I also, that would be kind of soul crushing. I mean, I've given presentations at school and just looked out and saw how the students just weren't paying attention, and they're looking at you with these fucking like dead eyes because they're so bored and they don't care. And some of them aren't even looking at you, they're on their phone. Or I had one girl just read a book while I was doing a presentation. And it's kind of soul crushing. You're like, I'm just up here yapping, wasting my time. At least for therapy, there's something. The people there, they want to be there. And I like how I want to fashion myself as like a Socrates-esque person, like sort of philosopher. That's one of the reasons I want to be a therapist too. Is I want to fashion myself like as a philosopher. And as corny as that sounds, I mean, I'm really just a kid at heart. I had my little pipe dreams, and I just want to play fucking dress up essentially, but like in real life. Um, but I just have this like daydream of like reading all these like books on philosophy and psychology, and becoming informed about how people are, and then being almost like Carl Jung, or like how Socrates was, where he would ask people questions and like get to the bottom of things. I like the Socratic method. And which, if you don't know the Socratic method, it's essentially like asking people to define terms that they use and to really think deeply about the words that they use. I mean, it's more, I guess, complicated than that, but kind of not really actually. But that's a very simple explanation, but it also is just kind of what it is. It'd be like if you know, say like you had a girlfriend and you were like, oh, I love her. It's like, okay, well, it's like the Jordan Peterson thing. Like, what do you mean by love though? Like, what does that mean for you? And then it's like, oh, well, I guess like I support her, and I really care for her well-being, and all this stuff. I'm attracted to her. And then it's like, you might go, okay, well, like, how do you support her though? And then why do you support her? And then it's just like getting to the bottom of why you do what you do, and why you say what you say, and think what you think. And through asking why, and being curious. And I think that's useful for not only therapy, but just having interesting conversations, if people are willing to do that. A lot of people don't like to think that hard, but I think it would just be cool to actually be good at that and to have my own practice. And also, I wouldn't have to work much, because like I said, I've tried avoiding working a 40-hour week as much as I could. I mean, I remember my first job. It's still like, it was 40 hours a week, but it still felt kind of romantic because it was my first job. I was 18, and I had my own apartment. Um, I got that apartment by lying to the landlord and saying that I had a job when I didn't. And I had a trust fund that my dad gave me, where like it wasn't like a fucking like $1 million trust fund, like a rich kid trust fund, but I guess when I was born, he put like $500 into some stock thing, and then by the time I was 18, it was 5,000, and so I just cashed that shit immediately. And I got an apartment with it, and just told the landlord that I was an electrician's assistant, because my friend who I was living with at the time, his dad was an electrician, and he was also an alcoholic, and I knew that he wouldn't answer his phone, and so I just put his number down, and I was like, that's my boss, I'm his assistant, like electrician assistant or apprentice or whatever. and I make $11 an hour, and that was enough back then in 2016, not even that long ago, to afford your own apartment. And so I remember that even being like a fair bit back then. I thought that was like a lot of money. And so yeah, I got that place, and then I was like, well, I need a job now because that 5 grand started to run out really quickly. And so I got my first job, and it was just at a factory, and there was still like a romantic element to it because I mean, I've always kind of been like a hopeless romantic. Not I don't just mean like romance as far as relationships or something. I mean like being an idealist, thinking of my life like a movie or something. And so and like being very interested in like minute details of things. And so I was like, oh, this is like my first job. I'm like a grown up now, and I felt all good about driving to work and saying I was going to work and I have a job, and then being on lunch break and being like, I'm on lunch break right now. I'm an adult. I still thought that was like cool, but then that quickly went away, and I ended up getting fired from that job, which was the first of many jobs I've been fired from. Just part of the reason I'm so insecure about my job I have now is because I've been fired from so many jobs. And everyone at my job now, they're like, "Oh, you're doing a good job. You're doing a good job," but that's what they always tell you, and then they fucking fire you. I think I've said that before, but yeah, like I got fired from that job, and then I was just working at factories, and I hated it. I hated like it was just so boring, and some of those places were like dangerous, and just like I didn't like the people, and they were loud. Like the factories were loud and dirty, and just the fluorescent lighting. It just was like ugly, and it just wasn't a fun or pleasant place to play. They weren't fun or pleasant places to work. I mean, the one place I worked at, it had one of those signs that was like so many days since an accident, and I was just getting like coolant sprayed all over me all day because like there were supposed to be. It's funny. Like I was working on these machines, and they were like it was like for truck parts, and you would like put the truck part in this machine and close it and press a button, and then it would be hot after it was in the machine, and so then coolant would spray on it to cool it down. And there were supposed to be doors on the machine, but there weren't any anymore, and so the coolant would just spray all over me all day, these fucking chemicals. And also, I saw that on the walls there were supposed to be like mask and goggles, but like there weren't any. And so, hopefully that doesn't give me fucking cancer at some point. And I remember at that job, they didn't fucking train me at all. Like one person very quickly showed me what the job was, and then they just put me on my own, and I'm supposed to be like working on these fucking like truck brakes or like whatever part it was, like some important part for a truck. And then every so many parts you had to like do some math and like some measurement, and I didn't know how to do it. And so I'm fucking 18, 19. I don't know any better. I just don't want to get fired, so I just did my best and like just started making these parts. And I made like I worked the whole day, and at the end I was like one of my like someone actually finally came by, some I think it was just another coworker, and they were looking at my parts, and they're like, these are fucked up. Like you drilled, it was like part of the machine drilled a part of like wherever these parts were. And he was like, the drill parts, like the drill holes are way too long. And he was saying it was like a common problem, and it was like a common mistake that you could make, and you need to make sure you're like doing some certain thing with the machine to avoid that. But then he noticed that all the parts were broken. Like all the parts were incorrectly made. And there were like 700. And so then he calls my fucking manager over, and the manager's like freaking out, and he's like running back and forth from the office where the other managers are. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get fired now. And then my one coworker that saw it, he was actually really cool because he was like, at first I think he might have been mad at me. I don't really remember, but then I told him, I didn't get fucking trained. Like they just threw me on here and like didn't tell me anything, and they just told me to work. And then he was like, all right, yeah, you know what, that's bullshit. And he started actually like fighting for me because I was always afraid. I was very afraid of confrontation, and I never, at that point, I never would have said like, oh, you guys, like to the managers, you guys didn't train me at all. Um, and so this guy was like, standing up for me, and he's like, no, because and I was like, you don't need to fight for me, dude. Don't stick your neck out for me. I don't want you to get in trouble. And he was like, nah, that's bullshit, bro. Like, if they didn't fucking train you, that's fucking bullshit. And, because a lot of these factory workers are very rough around the edges. They're ready to fucking throw down for anything. He was being pretty cool. And, so yeah, then the fucking manager comes out, and he's like, just ship the parts off. And I was like, aren't they all broken? He's like, just ship them off. And so hopefully nothing fucking came of that. I actually tried to report that job after that because I felt guilty because they're fucking like truck brakes or something and they're broken. And I tried calling like some state agency about how they were like shipping off broken parts knowingly. And they made me sign some form that said I'd been trained for 10 days and I hadn't been trained at all. And like that agency, like they told me to call another agency, and then that agency told me to call another, and then the third agency told me to call the first agency, and I just went in a loop. And that was like my first experience with bureaucracy. I was just like, dude, there's no way to like to do this. Like it just is what it is, you know. Like I'm not the fucking manager. It's not on me. I was a fucking kid, you know. Like it's not on me to like make sure like there's quality assurance. That's on him. If he says ship it off, and I didn't do the shipping. It's fucking. I was just doing what I was told to do. You know, I was just following orders. But yeah, I remember that job. I also like at the end because I hated it there. The coolant thing never sat right with me because I'm getting sprayed with these like stinky chemicals all day, and like I never got trained, and so I was just like ready to quit. And I remember realizing like how poorly ran it was with not only the truck thing, but like not only the broken part thing, but excuse me, I was taking my lunch break and I was just sitting at my workstation, and most people would go to like there's like a lunch room, and I didn't want to because I'm a fucking cretin, so I wanted to just sit alone. And so I just sat at my workstation, and I wasn't paying attention to the clock because I expected like once lunch was over, somebody was gonna come and like talk to me or something, like ask me ask me what I was doing, if I needed any help, like the way a good manager would do. And so I was like, all right, well, someone, because I'm new, someone will probably like stop by after my lunch break, and then I'll know my lunch break's over. But no one did, and then I realized it had been like 40 minutes since the lunch period ended, and no one stopped by. So I just started like walking around the factory and exploring it. But anyway, that was a long aside about that job. But after that, I started working in restaurants. So I was sitting in an Applebee's, and I didn't know how much servers made, but a waiter, like, she finally told me. Like, not that I was, like, waiting for her to tell me. I just mean, like, I had no idea they made that much. And then I finally learned when I was talking to this waiter. She was like, oh, I make, like, $100 a day. And, I was shocked, because they only worked, like, 5 hours a week. And so, after that, I was trying to work in restaurants, and I did that for a long time, and that was a lot better because it is like shorter hours, but it's still like, it still sucks just having to fucking work your whole life. Like your whole day is gone. Like I said, you only get this one chance to be alive. And hold on, I'm trying to find something. You only get this one chance to be alive, and you're spending like all of your time just doing some like menial bullshit. And the thing is, like, so many people are okay with it. So many people don't even care. They don't even notice it. I'm looking for a sock on my floor. I have one pair of socks that I like wear. I'm going to my cabin, and I have like one pair of warm socks that I wear when I go up there, and I can't find the other one. But yeah, like, so many people just don't seem to care about it. They just sort of go throughout their day. They don't even really question it. And that's just crazy to me. Like, how do you... Like, I remember I would talk to my dad, and he would be like, I'm gonna retire when I'm like 60, and then I'm gonna get to enjoy my time. I'm gonna get to do whatever I want. And I would just think, like, that sounds awful. Like, 60 years old? It's like you have like 10 years left before you start really getting like major old people health problems. I found my other sock. And then after that, like you're just gonna start. You're gonna be too old to want to do anything, And it's like, don't you wanna spend as much time as possible enjoying your life? Like this whole thing of like living your whole life for Saturday and then doing that so you can have 10 years of like doing nothing on retirement. That just sounds so fucking miserable to me. Like I just won't do that. I refuse. I don't care. Like if I got like if I didn't pass, if I don't get my master's, or like if something happens with my job, and if I'm not able to do my thing of like being a therapist and only having to work 3 days a week, like I'm just getting on retirement or on a disability, or I'm fucking like I'm either just gonna get on disability or like live out in the fucking woods. Like I refuse to do that. I refuse to live like that. Just having to fucking spend all of my time just working for just like doing something I hate, or even if I didn't hate it, like I guess I don't really hate my job now, but just spending all of my time just doing some boring task. I want to learn about things. I want to learn about the world. I want to read things. And that's the thing. It's like I don't even really need that much. Like I'm not like a high maintenance person. I don't need to go on vacations or travel or anything. I mean, I would kind of like to, but really, like I'd be content just like having a small place of my own. Not even a house. I'll fucking live in a trailer. I don't give a shit. Or an apartment, at least if I don't have upstairs neighbors. But I'd like my own place. Like, I'd like to just be away from people. I don't want to live with people on top of me or live on top of other people. And, I just want to, like, I'd be content to just, like, read books and write and fucking play video games forever, And that's another thing, like, with just how shitty media is now. It's just so crazy how the powers that be drop the ball, because, people are becoming so radicalized and so political, and it really didn't have to be this way. Like, all the people in power could have just, like, enslaved us and made their money and made us their fucking meat batteries. But they, like, had to make everything suck and make everything retarded. Like, if things were still, like, 2013 level good as far as video games and movies and music, things were still, like, late 2000s, early 2010s good, nobody would be politically radical. Like, all the elites, they could do whatever they want, and no one would care. Because we'd be like, alright, well, at least there's, like, some great movies coming out every year, and some great albums, and some great games. It's like, all they had to do was just make sure the slop was good, and then everything would have been fine. But they couldn't have even done that. They had to get all greedy, and now everything sucks, and everyone's fucking starting to think about politics because everything sucks, and now everybody's all radicalized and pissed off. All they had to do was just make good slop. But yeah, anyway, I don't know. I just wanted to ramble a bit. Just want to talk while I was getting ready to go up to this cabin and sleep so I can wake up on Sunday and do stuff all day, and then go to work Monday and type away at the keyboard and make the phone calls and send the emails all fucking day and say good morning. Say good morning. How are you doing? I'm doing good. How was your weekend? My weekend was good. What did you do this weekend? Oh, I didn't really do much. I just chilled at my house. Oh yeah? You went to your son-in-law's birthday party? How was that? That was good? That sounds fun. Okay, well, I'll see you around. Oh, it is Monday after all. It is Monday. I'm gonna do that. And, finally get to Friday night and be excited. And then I'm gonna spend Saturday again not feeling like I've done enough to fucking cherish the short amount of time I have to be my own self and not just like a fucking extension of a computer in an office. And then Sunday's gonna roll around and then it's all gonna repeat. So yeah, I'm gonna spend this last hour awake trying to fucking cherish it as much as possible. And that's about it.